Module 6. Control your impulses. In the previous modules, we spoke about choice points and how many opportunities you might have to make a better decision. We've also looked at long-term gains versus short-term benefits and how we might be inclined to go for short-term gains if we don't take the opportunity to think ahead. Thinking ahead will help with both the choices you make and being able to weigh up the differences of shorter and longer-term gains. Specifically, we spoke about how short-term gain could seem more attractive if there's a way to get it right now as opposed to waiting and getting a bigger benefit in the long term, perhaps. That takes some self-control and certainly the ability to think ahead. Let me tell you about an interesting study which demonstrates the difference between short-term gains and long-term benefits. A simple experiment, a psychologist wanted to see how children reacted to having choices. What he did was to bring young children into a room and he told them that they had a choice. They were offered a plate with a small marshmallow sweet on it. The kids could eat the marshmallow treat straight away, but could have only one. The choice was this. If they resisted the temptation for the sweet for 10 minutes, they get 2 sweets. During the 10 minutes, the researcher would leave the room, so the child was left alone. The child with a nice sweet on the table, which they could eat at any time, or wait 10 minutes and get 2. What do you think happened? What would you do? The results were interesting. You might not think that was a difficult thing to do. You might as well wait 10 minutes and get twice the reward. 10 minutes. But for young children, this challenge bordered on a battle between restraint and impulse. It's that strong desire to have something, instant gratification, or self-control, and that ability to think ahead, make a better choice. Young children in general will be more impulsive until they develop the ability of self-control and thinking ahead. So how did the children fare? Some kids just couldn't resist or wait. They took the marshmallow and ate it straight away, sacrificing the chance to have 2 in a little while. Others used some pretty ingenious ways to stop the temptation. Some even covered their eyes to stop the temptation. Some rested their hands on their arms, talked to themselves, sang songs or played games with their hands and their feet. These kids were able to resist and doubled their reward. The other kids, after being left to their own devices, grabbed the plate in front of them and ate a single treat straight away. Now, just as interesting was that the choice the child made eventually became a reflection of the character and psychological strength that they would develop through their life, unless they chose to learn how to control those impulses. As a psychological skill, resisting impulse is probably one of the most basic ones. It's often described as the root of all emotional self-control, since all emotions by their very essence lead to an impulse to take action. The difference in the lives of these 2 groups of kids was dramatic. Researchers tracked them into their adulthood and found that the group that delayed gratification, those who waited 10 minutes and got twice the reward, were more sociable and more able to cope with frustrations of life. They were better able to cope with stressful situations. They were also more self-reliant and able to pursue their goals in life. That's amazing. In the group that took the marshmallow treats straight away, the majority had more troubled profiles. In adolescence, they would shy away from social contact, were more stubborn and indecisive, and easily knocked back by any setback they encountered. As adults, they got stressed more easily and were prone to react to irritations with anger. So how might you resist similar temptations? So what can we make of this? By being able to learn how to resist short-term gains by using a load of different methods, you can grow up to have a better life. That's incredible when you think about it. It also shows that developing your ability to think ahead before taking actions could help you turn your life around. And it's not just about consequences. By developing this skill to think ahead, you can also develop those important social and emotional qualities. Humility. That's a humble acknowledgement that you don't know everything and you can learn from others. Empathy, the ability to put ourselves in other people's shoes. Integrity, the knowledge to do what needs to be done. Perseverance, the ability to soldier on despite setbacks and resistance. And finally, creativity. You'll be able to think up new ways to do things and making things work for you. If you can get all that by starting to think ahead, that's got to be worth it. 3 key techniques to learn. If thinking ahead can bring so many benefits, how can you improve your ability to do just that? Let's go through 3 techniques you can use to improve your ability to think ahead. Tip number 1. Weigh up the advantages and disadvantages of what you're about to do. We know that thinking ahead is about weighing up your options, looking ahead and thinking about the consequence of choosing option A over option B, like with the example we gave you of Mike with the drink problem earlier. It's about weighing up things before you do them. It's about not being impulsive. Weighing up the advantages and disadvantages of an action helps you frame that situation and avoid possible consequences of an angry, aggressive or impulsive response. Tip number 2, practice if-then thinking. This is where you imagine different outcomes to what choices you have. You ask yourself a simple question. If I do that, then this is most likely to happen. In this way, you can think ahead about 2 different choices and see which one would probably give you the best outcome for you and for those close to you. Try and consider all the ifs and consequences that ought to happen or might happen when you do the thing. For example, I know if I hit him, then I won't be allowed to attend that event tomorrow. I know if I decide to take this, then most likely I'm going to go and do X, and so on. Now think about the things that get you angry and do the same for different responses. By doing this, you give yourself different and better options. Strengthen consequential thinking by coming up with a number of solutions to imaginary problems. For example, think about a choice that you've made in the past and the consequence of that. What happened? Was it good? Was it bad? By having thought a little bit more about what happened, how might you change what you did? So practice anticipating problems before they happen. Tip number 3, practice new and alternative behaviours. If you know that something gets you angry, for example, in your mind, think about a different response and how else you might respond. Think of it like a sportsperson in a competition who has to stay calm while they're being intimidated. By staying calm, you can think clearer and make much better decisions. You'll also feel better about yourself because you can use self-control, especially in situations where previously you couldn't. And you're not going to get this right straight away. Changing your thinking to be able to think ahead needs practice and dedication. Always think about the problem as having more than one solution as well. The more tools you have at your disposal and the more creative you are in considering them, then the better you are at solving the problems and dealing with sensitive situations. Mind activity. By now, you'll have a strong understanding of consequential thinking ahead to potential outcomes for what you're considering doing now. As an activity, I want you to consider the following 3 scenarios. Number 1, imagine a friend of yours likes to gamble and generally spends a little more than she can afford, with the result it leaves her a little short for her rent money. What would you say to help warn her of the consequences of going online and making a bet? What could she do instead to take her mind off the gambling? Remember the kids and the marshmallows and be creative in your thinking here. Number 2, a friend of yours likes to smoke weed and is considering taking something that you know could be a bit more addictive and cause a few problems in the future. How might you approach him and talk about the pros and cons of what he's thinking of doing? Bear in mind the advantages and disadvantages of the short and long-term thinking. Number 3, one of your best friends likes a drink, especially in social situations, but they've just started drinking earlier in the week when they're alone at home. Now you can see that's going to lead nowhere good. Using some of the ideas and suggestions in this module, how might you help your friend make a decision to stop drinking when they're alone in the house? So to summarise, in this section, we've spoken about thinking ahead, making better choices. We've seen that most situations you'll find yourself in will give you a number of choice points or opportunities to change your mind. By thinking ahead and looking at different endings to each choice, you'll be better informed to make better decisions. We spoke about being able to weigh up long-term benefits over short-term gains and looked at the study with children and those marshmallows. We saw how by developing this skill in your life will improve in a number of ways. And we discussed the 3 tips. Number 1, weighing things up. Number 2, practice if-then thinking. So if I do this, then this could happen. Number 3, practice doing things differently. Well done for getting this far in this self-development program, and we'll speak soon. Bye.